Just the other day, I was looking at some guitar terms and I thought I knew them. But when I looked them up, I realized that I really didn't have a good handle on what their definitions were. So when I teach students, I should know these definitions. Well, maybe I knew them a while ago, but I'll give you six that I had to refresh my memory because at one point I think I knew them, but when I went to go teach them, I really didn't remember exactly what they meant. The first is upstroke and downstroke. Now, I know how to see that on paper and I know how to play it, but when I started teaching it to somebody else, it was pretty simple. But when we started getting into alternate picking methods, like up, down, it gets a little bit more complicated. For instance, when you're learning like a simple blues lick, a lot of times you'll start in a downward motion, like something like this. That's one way to do it, but those are all downstrokes. But when you're teaching someone an alternate picking method, it gets a little bit more complicated because it's a feel thing. So for instance, it's not just down, it's down, up. And in order to teach that, it got a little complicated and I couldn't remember exactly how to do it. The next is hammer-ons and pull-offs. Now, hammer-ons and pull-offs are one of those things that guitar players absolutely love to see. They're fantastic for acoustic, electric. They're usually started with a strong downward strum. So typically a hammer-on is in an ascending movement and a pull-off is in a descending movement. When you see that on a staff, when it's written in music, the ascending is the direction at which it's moving. So it actually has a line that shows that there's an actual ascending or descending line. Most of the time, you're not looking at music; you're just kind of feeling it out. One band in particular, especially one guitarist who does this phenomenally well, is the lead guitarist from AC/DC. And when he plays Thunderstruck, it's very simple what he's doing in the technique, but the hammer-ons and pull-offs are just very, very natural. Well, I'm not going to be able to do it as well as Angus does, but just to give you an idea of using that upstroke, downstroke, and also hammer-ons and pull-offs, it's kind of a cool exercise in order to be able to use. So just on the B string, on the fourth fret, and move up a little faster. Now this next one is a harmonic. I thought I knew harmonics pretty well. I do them all the time. You do them on the 12th fret, on the 7th fret, on the 5th fret. But actually, those are just natural harmonics. There's artificial harmonics, and that's past the 12th fret. So you get into the 16th and 17th frets. So these are just natural harmonics. And basically, you're barely pressing your finger across the string, and when you do that, you achieve this dampening effect that allows you just to kind of simply play those notes in a natural harmonic. But when you get past the 12th fret, those are artificial harmonics. Now, this next thing, I thought that I had a pretty good handle on the difference between vibrato and tremolo. I found an article from Sweetwater that basically said that they're the same, but they're different. And I'm like, well, I had to read a little bit further into the article to really kind of get a definition of both. So from the Sweetwater article, it says basically vibrato is a modulation effect that affects pitch, and it kind of makes this warbly, underwater, pitchy kind of sound. But the tremolo is also a modulation effect created by varying amplitudes or volumes of the signal. It basically creates a percussive sound like a shuddering or a stuttering or a pulsating sound. So the vibrato actually comes from the guitar, whereas the tremolo actually comes from the amplifier. So when you think of a guitar like this Gretsch, and you see this tremolo bar, or some would call it a whammy bar, it really isn't a tremolo bar. It actually is a vibrato bar. For some reason, the manufacturers, they call it that, but it really, in essence, a vibrato bar is exactly what this is. It's not a tremolo that comes from the amp. The next is a bend and a slide. Now, I do know the difference between a bend and a slide, but as I was thinking about it, I'm like, wait a minute, what is the difference? Because a bend actually just bends the note, either a half a step, quarter of a step, a whole step, depending on the gauge of the string. And in some really light gauges, you can actually bend it up almost 2 whole steps for some of those guys who are strong enough to be able to do it. When I do a bend, I usually use 3 fingers because it's a lot easier to get, really get into that bend as opposed to just 1 finger, which is not as strong. But when you think of the difference between a bend and a slide, the slide gets a little bit more complicated. From the classical music understanding or interpretation, it's called glissando. It's a slide from one note to the next. And when you see it in notation, it's just like a squiggly line. But when we're playing, we don't really think about things like that. We're just playing. So an extreme example of a slide actually is a glass slide or a metal slide, or there's all different types of variations of slides. You can get all different types of materials. What's really fascinating is that slides are used in classical music all the time. They're used sparingly, but in guitar music, when you hear a slide being used, you know exactly what it sounds like. Now, but the thing you may not know is how to distinguish between the glass slide, a metal slide, or even a plastic one. And that has to do with the way that the player actually plays it. But not to worry, all you have to know for slides is sliding from one note to the next, not bending, but it's actually sliding to it. And the last one I had to figure out was a double stop. Now, double stops are used all the time in country music. Keith Urban, Brad Paisley, all the chicken picking guys. Chicken picking is just like speed country music that's super, super fast. These guys are phenomenal at it. And it's very distinct. A double stop is basically playing 2 notes at the same time. Now, cellos do it, violas do it, violins. They all kind of do that double stop note at the same time, but when a guitar does it, it's very distinct. For example, if E major is a double stop, so we're just going to use this E major idea. So we're going to hit 2 notes at the same time, and then 2 more notes, 2 more notes, 2 more notes. Now they're not chords because a chord technically is 3 notes. A double stop is just 2 notes played at the same time. So what I was just playing there was on the 1st fret, and it's the 3rd string. And the next note is the middle finger is on the 2nd fret on the 4th string, and they're played together. Now I'm just using my fingers, but you can pluck them as well. So, and then they're separated usually by minor thirds or major thirds. So like this. And they go all the way up the neck of the guitar. They're super amazing. When you get a person who really knows how to use double stops, like for instance, Derek Trucks from Tadashi Trucks Band, he's just incredible. Not only at the slide, but also double stopping on the slide. It's fantastic. Well, that's it. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get more videos about all different types of guitar techniques and different ways to play. Thank you so much for joining us, because we want you to play what you feel. If you want to look at some more videos, just check some out over here. We'll see you next time.